Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Bleav in Kings podcast. I'm your host, Mark Haynes, and you see who I got right with me right now for today's special episode. One of the most beloved players in Sacramento's history, Mr. Jason Thompson. What's going on, my guy? How you doing?
What's up, Mark? Appreciate you for having me, man.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, man. So first off, man, you're a record holder. Here we just got through talking about that. The longest tenured Sacramento King of all time since De'Aaron Fox just got traded. How does it feel, first off, to hold on to that record?
I mean, it's surreal to be honest. Me getting drafted out of Ryder in 2008. I think it's one of the things where you just want to be able to establish yourself, in the league. And then I was able to, have good numbers my rookie year, and obviously unfortunate to be able to, in those 7 years with Sac, I had seven different coaches. So in this NBA is a little not ideal. But it made me stronger, as a player and as a person. And it's one of those things where you don't really have the development maybe of the program that they do maybe now when they if a team is trying to kind of like to trust the process with the Sixers and Brent Brown, where they didn't have good years but he still was the coach, so it still was the same system and stuff. So for me it's a blessing, to be able to, like I said, re-sign with Sac as well too. And then, like I said, to be able to do what I could, for that organization. And I got there as a 21-year-old, and I, left at, 28. So, I was a little kid and then grew up as a man, all in that city.
And you mentioned we'll talk. I'm gonna get your thoughts on De'Aaron and his trade, but you mentioned seven coaches in 7 years, and how difficult was that, especially being a young player and having to develop, in an NBA that was also changing, the style of play was changing, but to get so many different coaches each year in that span of time?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I was able to average like 12 and 8 in my rookie year, to be able to have solid numbers. And then, on the all season to have a plan, and you have those exit meetings, but you're having an exit meeting with a coach that, that wasn't going to be there the next season. So, you don't have a plan of how you're going to fit that system and work on development. So even then, a lot of guys would go home and stuff, to work out in their respective areas and stuff if they had homes or whatever. Or even if they were in SAC, they would come to an empty gym because there wasn't a coach or player development guy in the gym. And I think that speaks volumes. And especially now, me still being in the coaching system, how important that is, for young guys. One, believing in you. Also, two, you have coaches that can travel. For me, my base, I'm from New Jersey. And I live in Philadelphia. So, coaches nowadays, if they invest time in their players, they'll come to their home, spend a couple of weeks with them and do the training that they need so that when the season starts, then they're all good, And like I said, that speaks volumes to the organization and the team and the coaching staff. And, I feel like that was missing for us, with having, different coaches every year, man. There's no stability. And if you want consistent winning, you got to have consistent coaching staff from the top.
Right. And as earlier this season, Mike Brown was relieved of the head coaching position, which now Doug Christie is the interim head coach. What were your thoughts on him, especially when they just signed him to an extension, over the summer and everything? What were your quick reaction when you first heard the news?
Well, it's tough. I know what SAC has been. You had the glory years with C Webb and Vlade and all that. And then, there's been a drought. And, for me, I was able to go to the games against Golden State, when they finally got to the playoffs. And, you look at the business now, man, where, Mike Brown turns that team around, finally does something that not a lot of coaches done, I think, since Rick. and he's not there anymore. And I think that sometimes when you have certain expectations, and then when you make it to the first round of the playoffs, and the next year you don't make the playoffs, it just puts more pressure on yourselves. And I won't speculate on the relationship with Fox and Mike Brown. I would think that they probably had a little bit to do with it as well too, because you got to kind of make sure that you get along with your stars. And we all know from the Phil Jacksons and the Michael Jordans and the Kobe Bryants and the Shaquille O'Neals and that sort, for you to be a really great team, you have to have that. You may not like the guy, but you got to find ways to work. And I'm not saying that they didn't like each other at all, but I just think that we are sometimes blinded by certain things. If you think that face of franchises and stuff don't know things are going to happen, you know what I mean? And that's not just with him, that's just with everybody. So it's unfortunate because, like I said, I've seen Mike Brown do great things in Cleveland and with the teams with the Lakers and stuff, and you thought he would be there for the future, but like I said, it's just part of the business. And with that being said, Doug Christie, I feel like, has been doing a great job as well too. Like I said, he's has heart and passion, for that team of, when he played. So not saying it didn't mean nothing to Mike, but it means something to Doug a little bit differently, because I think ever since he's been done, and he's been with the organization for a long period of time. So he knows that locker room. He knows how guys are supposed to be and how they're not supposed to be. And, at times, especially with this generation, those player coaches are really, really important because, you've been there in the trenches and you know what guys are feeling and going through on and off the court.
Absolutely. And you obviously being a former King, you spent time with Doug. When you knew him, when you was around him often, did you see him taking this role and becoming a head coach? Because he went from being a player, he's been TV, he's been moving around and stayed around the organization. Did you think him being the head coach of the Kings would be something that could happen?
I mean, I can't say that I didn't think it could happen, but I just think that sometimes guys like that and that type of power and the relationship you have with players, that some guys just like maybe being an assistant. And it's not a thing of, hey, I want to be a head coach or I need to be a head coach. But you're like, okay, if you think about it, if Mike wins coach of the year and then, he, and then he signs an extension, you think he's there for the long haul. So,
right.
It's not like Doug made a move when he made the extension and said, hey, I want to go elsewhere. He still stayed on business and stayed with the organization. So I didn't know that that's what he wanted to do. Maybe it is what he wanted to do, or maybe it isn't what he wanted to do. But, for now, since he has that role, he's making the best of his opportunity. And it's kind of the analogy of just players, like, it's next man up. And when your name is called and when your time is there, you got to make the best of it, or they're going to find someone else that could do it.
Yep. And now we go jump to the hottest topic in Sacramento in the last week. There's been a lot of topics that's been jumping on. There's been a wild roller coaster year, but the man who's the second longest tenured Sacramento King is no longer a part of the team. And he's he just played his first game with the San Antonio Spurs. I'm talking about De'Aaron Fox. I think he had 23 and 13, and they got the win. What was your thoughts there? Obviously it's been rumbling and rumors about, he wanted out, or, the Kings wanted to get rid of him. A lot of drama there. But what was your thought process when, the whole thing just started to crumble?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a tough situation. Obviously, he had signed a 5-year deal. Was that 5 years ago or 4 years ago or so? So he clearly was the face of the franchise. Then you get Domas, to team up with him, and like I said, you had Keegan in the draft, and obviously things were promising. You get Malik Monk as well too, and then like I said, as players, man, you just don't know. Wins and losses, you can see stuff, but then sometimes even when you win, it doesn't mean that everything is going good, behind the scenes. You got to be professional, but you just never know how things are. And, I didn't really hear stuff until later on that they offered him, another max and he didn't want it. That's what I saw. I'm not saying that that's true or not because
Right.
I was curious and I never had heard him say anything about he didn't want to be there
Mhm, mhm.
or something. But obviously, if you don't want to sign an extension, then that's one thing. So um, I think that he tried to do, the best of his ability. I think he's done great things. Sacramento hasn't seen some of the things, since the glory days.
Mhm.
And he's the face of that as well, too. So I just think that, they got great players in Demar as well, too. So expectations were high. And then, like I said, they had championship aspirations. And once they didn't kind of meet the quota to the early start of the season,
Mhm.
you kind of gotta like, before the deadline, you kind of gotta look at certain things and see if you can, check those boxes because, like I said, they made moves this off season to win and
Yeah.
win championships and not for the future. So, it puts a little bit of pressure, from the top and it just trickles down.
Yeah, and being that you're a guy that's been in the locker rooms and the everyday, hustle and bustle of the league. When you have situations like this, um, the Sacramento Kings yesterday they struggled against the Orlando Magic, big talented team, and they got ran through last night. But obviously think they got Zach LaVine and they got Jonas Valanciunas coming, and I gotta figure out how to say dude's name, but Jake Lavaria. I'll
Yeah.
figure it out later. But they
You
got
got
new
some
pieces.
time.
Yeah, I got time. I'll get it right soon. But they got new pieces coming in. How difficult is it for you as the player, especially and I think of a guy like Malik Monk who has a really good relationship with Fox, to see one of your guys go and then you got to just, stay a professional and keep it going.
Yeah, I'm sure it's tough, but it's one of them situations where like you said, you get paid to be a professional. So, I guess like the example is like we all got things that go on at home,
Hmm.
but we can't bring that, onto the court or right when you come into the facility. So, I think that you know, I think the tough part was for them, I think not making the playoffs last year. You know what I mean? Like, and I think that you're expected to be a playoff team and, you go into the first round, game 7. Um, and lose a tough one that they could have possibly won or should have won to some people. I'm sure Kings fans, and you don't get to the first round again. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? So,
Hmm.
um, it's just one of those things where you look at it and say what wasn't working. Was it the offense? Were they not getting the same amount of stops? I remember them being a top defensive team in that playoff year. I'm not sure if there was a drop off on certain. I can honestly say I watched the games, but I don't know like the certain amount of stats for team.
Right.
Like what was the difference between that year and then the last year compared to the
Hmm.
start of this year? You know what I
Hmm.
mean?
Hmm.
Which I'm sure like you can probably get the answer right there. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
is it more ISOs? Are they not moving the ball as well? Um, does their defense lead to transition so then they don't have to set plays? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think a lot of things are factors, and I'm sure one of them too is like, and like I said, like I played with Demar and all have the utmost respect, but I'm not sure that when you sign guys, like, is it a thing where, do I need the ball? Am I taking the last shot? Are you taking the last shot? Do you
Hmm.
take the last shot because you got more points than I do, or you're making it? You know what I mean? I think, before De'Aaron was going to take the final shot regardless, unless he was
Right.
getting doubled, or maybe Malik.
Yeah.
And then now, I think when Mike Brown was there, you had
Hmm.
De'Aaron, you had Malik, you had DeMar. So you had 3 guys. And I'm sure out of those 3 guys, all of them wanted to take the shot. So,
Right.
I think that has a lot to do with it as well, too, if it is.
Yeah, that's what that's what it looks like to me. Especially with those guys being so, especially Demar and Fox being closers, and then Malik was coming into his own ever since he's been in Sacramento. You could tell, those guys wanted the ball, and then it's like when they lost a lot of close games, and it always kind of, to me, it seemed like it was like, who's taking the shot? And, when teams kind of know who that person is, it kind of runs smoother. So it looked like they kind of never figured that out. But that it was, to me, it was partially a chemistry issue. I don't think it was a Mike Brown or, I don't think it was one thing. I don't think it was one thing. It was the defense. A lot of teams in the league don't really play defense much anymore, but they've really struggled with like defending the 3-point line, and they shot the three so good in that playoff year that it kind of, it didn't matter.
Balance itself
Yeah,
out.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then this year, Keegan Murray, he struggled, especially, during that Mike Brown time. I think now since Doug has been the coach, I think he's been around 37-38%, but he
From
was in the
three.
20s. And I think the second behind Domas was like, the second highest was like 32% or something like that. So they struggled. But that's just my take on them right there or whatever. But now that Fox is gone, they have LaVine. Do you still, from the outside looking in, do you still have the same type of expectations for them that you had at the beginning of the year?
Yeah, I would think so. I mean, you still have, all-star caliber players in LaVine, DeMar, Domas. You got Malik as well too. I think that, like I said, I haven't watched. Well, I don't know. Did Zach play last night?
He played. Yeah, he played.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay, all
and he
right.
was
So I didn't. Yeah, I
he
didn't watch that game, but I know also too, like he didn't have a live practice and all that type of stuff. So, he's just hooping out there. So, it'd be interesting to know like what rotations they do,
right.
what, obviously the starting five, but then like who comes out first, who comes back in,
Yep.
those type of things they'll have to learn, off the fly.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe, use all-star, break as well too, going into the second half of the season. They'll be able to figure, a rotation out and different defensive schemes and stuff like
Mm-hmm.
that too. So, I think like you said, it's promising. You have an athletic guy. And then like you said, you have he was a Jonas as
Yeah.
well, who I play with and a good guy and can score and defend as well too. So, all guys that can definitely help a team. So, but like I said, I'm not sure. I think it's going to take some time. So, I know Kings fans want, immediate impact, which I think it's going to be. But like I said, as long as they're in the running for the play-in, then I think that's a team that's designed more for the playoffs than they are for the regular season.
Got you. And now let's go back in time. We talked about this current team, man. Let's go to your days, man. Number 12 pick, man. What do you remember as your welcome to the NBA moment?
Wow. Well, I remember my first game we played against the Timberwolves, and it was against Kevin Love
Mm,
on the road. And my family came to because we had like 5 road games, not the first to start off the season. And I
mm,
came off the bench, and just like any rookie, I was nervous and stuff. And I think we lost by like 1. But I had 18 and 10 or 11. And I think that, I'm not sure what rookie record that was for sack, but, I was one of guys to have a double double to start their career as a rookie.
nice.
I remember I saw the stat as well too, where I think Keegan had like 23, if I'm not mistaken,
I think so. Yeah.
or something like that. But then I saw myself on there too, as rookie first games and stuff like that too. So, I think that was like a welcome. I think that my home team is the Sixers, so that was like my 4th game of my career where I had a good game as well too in front of family, friends, also high school, college. Former teammates, and I mean, the tickets was like 400 tickets, man. It was lit, but it was a lot of love, man.
Yeah.
And then I would say also too, the thing that went viral when YouTube was still, not saying it's not, but my car got popcorned as a rookie, where I had teammates like Bobby Jackson, Brad Miller, were the vets, Kenny Thomas. So when we were at practice, I think you had to get like over 10 lifts, and I had my 10th lift. But I had one of the people not the front office, people that work in the office, like get the food for me, just a favor. And she walked in the weight room with the stuff rather than like putting it to the side and like me going to get it. Because I had to like have the breakfast or whatever.
Yeah.
So then, we had practice, good practice. I come back. I think I get like a huge shipment from Nike, so I'm mad hyped. And then I think in the video you can see like I have the box with me, like one of the boxes. And oh yeah, man, it was popcorn all over that joint. So, I had my teammate Dante Green, Cisco Garcia, Bano, all that. So yeah, man. I mean, it's good to laugh now, but I definitely wasn't happy when it happened.
Hey, and I always wonder. So, fortunately for myself, I've never got my car popcorn. But how long does it take to get all that out of there?
Yeah. So humbly, one I asked, and then it was just like I got one of the detail guys to do it, and to be honest, I never really even asked him how long it took. I just know I wasn't doing it. So, I had to go out of my pocket. I also had to like change some plans because I don't even know if Uber was back then. I had to call a taxi or something like that. Yeah. And I was living in the Tomas. So if you wanted an Uber in the Tomas, it's gonna take way too long because that's when it still was Arco. But yeah, man, I would say that was one of the wake up rookie moments for sure.
It did. So you got to play in the new arena too, right?
No, never did.
Okay.
So that was my first time in the arena when I went to the playoff game. That was the first time seeing it.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. So when all right. So from being into the arena, that was game one too, right?
Yeah, I went to both game one and game two.
Game one and game two. Was that the loudest you heard Sacramento fans in your time being here?
I would say it's up there. I mean, I'm not sure the amount of people that arena is compared to Arco. But there were times like, because those 7 years, every year they did not know if the team was coming back. So, you have the games like, obviously they weren't sold out just because the stability of us staying or leaving. And obviously, record wise, it wasn't the best either. So I understood both. But you had those times when you're playing like the Lakers, you're playing the Celtics, you're playing against, all those big teams where, you had the cowbells out and it felt like, that energy back then. So I would say it was definitely up there, but I just remember some of the times when you're playing in that type of atmosphere as well too. Because there was some special nights. I think there was, C-Web might have got a jersey retired one of the nights. So you had those type of nights too, but it definitely was up there. It was definitely the craziest I ever seen downtown though. I would say that. Yeah. I stayed downtown and, you couldn't barely walk. And then with me, I'm trying to be incognito. And the next thing you know, like one person spots me and then it's a wrap. But it was a lot of love, man. I was going to spots and people was like, I was taking my wallet out and they were like, no, your money's no good here, man. So it was a lot of love from the city, man.
Yeah, and that's why I was gonna go to, man. Like the love, like I said, you are one of the most loved players. And it seems like Sacramento really likes big men. Like after you, it was like Rashawn Holmes. Rashawn Holmes was somebody people loved or whatever. But what do you remember most about the love that Sacramento fans, gave you during your time here and even still to this day, like you just said?
Well, one, they knew that like how hard it was to to win just because of all the situations that were going on. I think also too is like, for me, I came in, averaging 22 in college, 22 and 12. So I knew that I could be able to score. But at times, you had to sacrifice because then, you had Tyreek come the next year. And then Cousins and then DeMarcus came the third year. So, I think my best statistical year was my second year with Tyreek.
Mhm.
And, for me, you would think that it would go up, but then obviously my shots were less with DeMarcus, being the focal point
Mhm.
and stuff like that too. And then obviously, like I had, scored averaged a bunch of double figures, at
Mhm.
times. But like I said, regardless of Cuz having, being great for the team and stuff, like, that I'm gonna call a spade, wasn't the easiest of teammates to play with as well, too.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? So it's like at times, that's how like the team and having a leader is important. You know what I
Right.
mean, as well, too. And like I said, it's not trying to throw shade or anything like that, but it's just
Right.
certain things that was going on, you know, wise to where like I said, stuff could just be way easier, and you're worrying about stuff that you shouldn't have to worry about. And another thing too, I would throw a lot of events for my foundation.
Mhm.
Um, in the Thomas, and I would have Thanksgiving, Christmas events, and then I also would have my annual basketball camp out in Rockland.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, I don't what's it called? It's courthouse, something like that. It was one
Mhm.
I can't think of the name of it, but yeah, I had my camps out there too. So definitely showed a lot of love, to the city. And we was having 500, 600 kids, man. Like it was crazy. So, it was definitely some good times back then.
Yes, sir, man. And I always appreciated y'all during that time because I just moved out here. I think it was 2010 when I got out here, and
Okay.
and I met you and Dante, and y'all always been just super cool, accessible. You never, like even now to this day, now I can get in touch with y'all if needed. And I appreciate that, and I think that's, you know, like you said, how the love you gave back to the city. I think that's the reason why the city still, to this day love you guys. And what do you remember as, like, in your career here in Sacramento? What do you remember as something that maybe you regret, in your time here?
Mm. Uh Man, that's a good one. What do I regret? I would say if anything, it would just be like going in more to the office, I guess, of the coaches. It just was a tough situation because, like I
Yeah.
said, like I'm coming back to a team where none of the coaches were there. You know what
Right.
I mean? Like, so I don't know if it's to have a regret, but it would be like maybe to go to the front office more, maybe, and say, can we make it work for another year just so we can get some type of continuity?
Hmm.
You know what I
Hmm.
mean? Because, like, I
Hmm.
mean, but also what I forgot to mention was that, every trade deadline, there was like 5 or 6 players getting traded.
Yeah.
Um, and then, like I said, it was a firing. And I don't know if all of them were mid-season, but it was a bunch. I mean, even the Mike Malone one was mid-season.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, you know what I mean? So, I think it was more of that. And then also too, if it was like with the leaders for it to be more of a mature locker room, right? I don't think
Hmm.
we
Hmm.
had some vets like were great, like Francisco Garcia, Brad Miller, but then once they got traded, there wasn't that many vets. Like Chuck
Right.
Hayes was a vet, was a good vet. But we just kind of needed a vet that kind of like could give us more stability. And
Hmm.
the crazy thing is, I tell people too, is that it's unfortunate that the playing stuff is now. But if the
Yeah.
playing was back then, you have way more teams like us and stuff that could have snuck in and made it to
Hmm.
the playing. and
Yep.
we would have more to play for, the second half of the season.
Yep. Absolutely. Because y'all was always right there. Y'all was always teetering.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
I know I'm holding you a little longer than
It's
I
all good, man.
planned,
It's all
but
good. It's all
a
good.
couple more questions and I'm gonna get you out of here. But the beam, the infamous beam that's got Sacramento going crazy. When you first heard about the beam, what did you think? Because I personally I thought it was corny when I first heard it. I was like, it's silly. It's the NBA, like whatever. But then when I seen it, I was like, oh, this is dope.
Yeah, I think for me, I didn't really understand it at first. I just thought that you hit the button and then it's like it's a thing, right? Like, and then it goes into the arena. I never knew that it went at
Outside.
outside until like later on. So I think that that's kind of fire in a
Mhm.
way, like to a smaller type of city, to be like you're still in tunes, with them. Like it kind of reminds you of like the Power Ranger type thing. We're showing our age for sure.
Right.
Um, but like I said, I feel like that's like that type of bond to keep the fans with it. So, like I said, I didn't know about it early on, but I think that it's super cool because of you want the team to win so bad, you want to see the beam, and even if you didn't watch the game and you had a long day at work and you go outside and you see the purple beam, the Kings won. Like that's fire to me.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
fire. That's fire.
Exactly. Because
Yeah.
that's definitely been the case with me. Like especially like when on the road because I don't travel with the team or whatever. And maybe I'm not watching the game even though I'm supposed to, but maybe I'm not watching it. And I go outside and I'm just doing, whatever I'm doing, and I look up and I'm like, oh, they won. And it's like a reminder
That's
to the whole
fire.
city. And that's dope.
Yeah.
That's dope. And my last one, man, I'm gonna start, and you gonna be the first person I'm starting this with. It's I'm a huge Marvels and Avenger fan or whatever, and I don't know if you ever seen the little cartoon TV show they got called What If or whatever, and they take Iron Man and Spider-Man and they basically change like who they are. Like Spider-Man might be the bad guy or Thanos might be a good guy, whatever. But it's called What If. So my question to you is what if you played in today's NBA for the Sacramento Kings? What would that look like?
Wow, that's a great question. For me, I would still kind of like be an energy guy.
Mhm.
But I would expand my game, which I did later on into my
Yep.
career. So I could shoot the three even before I got the sack. And then
Mhm.
I think in that time in the NBA, it was more post ups and mid range. So, if you go back to the clips, if
Mhm.
I'm shooting the mid range, I'm already going back on defense because I know it's going in. You know what I mean? And I had the
Mhm.
turnarounds, the jump hooks, high flying ducks and stuff like that too. So for me, my game was shooting threes as well. So,
Mhm. Mhm.
um, I could definitely, see myself playing the four and the five, stretching the floor, playing defense, running. Like that's my, my type energy to be able to give, to the team on both ends of the floor.
Yes, sir, man. Well, I'm gonna let you get out of here. Before you go, do you got anything you want to throw out there to Sacramento fans or the world, whatever? Floor is yours.
Yeah. Well, one, it's always good to be back on the Kings, platform. Um, I think shout out to Kings fans. We've been through a lot. For me, it's always been love. I know later on in my tenure there it was tough, and you just never knew if the guys were going to stay and not. So it's always love, and y'all showed love when I came to the playoffs, and that sorts. And you brought a kid in from Jersey at 21, and then I, became the longest tenured, and I'm still, holding that strong. So every time I would bring my lunch pail coming into work, blood, sweat, and tears, and a bunch of years, I played every game, all 82. So, like I said, bottom of my heart, it's still all love, and Kings all day.
all day, man. And we go wrap that up, man. Jay, I appreciate you again. Can't thank you enough. And hopefully we can do this again in the future. But
Sounds good, man.
everybody, thank you for tuning in. Again, this is the Bleav in Kings podcast. I'm your host, Mark Haynes. And until next time, we out. Jersey.
Jerry.